Microtrending.
Welcome back. Thank you for listening to Microtrending, the podcast for everything that is having a moment for better or for worse. I'm Gabrielle, as you know, and I am very happy to be joined here today with author, singer, actress, model Kaila Yu, whose new book, Fetishized, A Reckoning with Yellow Fever, Feminism and Beauty, is out now. We are recording this a few weeks in advance. That's just how podcasting works, as you know. But if you're listening to this right now, it is out. Go and get it. It is a memoir through a collection of essays that are exploring those topics in a very personal and moving way. I was really just struck by this book, and I'm excited to talk about it with you. So
Yeah,
welcome,
thank you
Kaila.
so much for having me on.
Yes, thank you. Yeah, I'm just wondering, it's a collection, obviously, that's exploring yellow fever and just Asian fetishization. I apologize in
It's hard
advance if
to
I mess
say,
up that.
yeah. I just did my audiobook and I was like, fetishization, fetishization.
Yeah.
So I know how to say it because I have to say it a million times, but it's not also a word you use in real life. Like nobody's using that in their comment. Like you'll say someone has a fetish, but you don't say
Right.
he fetishized her, or you don't say fetishization.
Exactly. It's almost like the more like academic term. And then there's like the crasser terms like yellow fever, which you explain. And kind of, I really also do appreciate like the research that was put into this book. Like it's an education. I really think like going through the different like ways in which Asian women specifically are fetishized. It's not just like one type. There's like the geisha trope. There's the ABG, which I feel like came about a little bit later, at least that term. But yeah, just I think the way that it was written is very just like digestible, and I think it's just really important, especially now. I'm sure we've all seen there's this kind of like pushback culturally against wokeness, and you're too sensitive, or the younger generations are too soft. You wouldn't have lasted a week in the 2000s. And it's just, and I understand it was a different time, but I think something that we saw, and I do want to get into the book and specific things that you'd like to discuss also, but something that just on a related note that came up very recently was with this last season of Love Island USA. Did you watch that at all?
I'm catching up. I was like deeply in season 6 when the controversy happened, so I wasn't caught up on this season. I'm now not to where she gets cut off or let go of the show yet, but I'm catching up. It's not as good as season 6, actually.
It really is not.
Yeah.
And I feel like you can stay in season 6. You don't have to catch all the way up.
Yeah, is it not even worth catching all the way?
Well, here's the deal. Like the only episode that I feel like is worth watching is the Meg Thee Stallion twerk off challenge that gets like the guys involved with twerking, and then maybe the finale.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Yeah, I know. Well, as you can probably see if you're enjoying season 6 at all. And there were obviously some issues with like microaggressions, especially against the Black contestants, and as there always is on Love Island, but in season 6 specifically. But I think season 7, as you probably saw, brought to light, I think, a specific slur that I'm shocked that more people are not familiar with, and I think really brought up an important double standard about just slur usage, and then like if we were making certain rules about terms used against one group of marginalized people, that like another one is or isn't as bad, with the whole Sierra situation.
Yeah, I mean, that's a big argument, I think. And some will say that Asians aren't considered people of color because we haven't suffered that much, actually. And in some ways, that's true. Asians do. We didn't go through slavery, obviously. And we don't maybe face as much discrimination that a Black person. Black people, I guess, have expressed that they feel like they've experienced more discrimination, and I can definitely see that point of view. So with that argument, so this Sierra controversy came out, and if you're not
Yeah.
familiar, is basically she was saying there's a C word that refers to Chinese people, but it covers all Asians, and it really kind of refers to our eyes. And from what I've seen on the show, I don't find her to be a malicious person, and I don't think she was
Right.
saying it maliciously. But she was, in a way, saying it maliciously without intentionally. She was basically saying, my eyes are looking too Asian, and I'm going to get Botox to
Right.
make them bigger. So
Yeah.
I don't think it was intentional, but, it was still,
Yeah.
not nice to hear if you're one who has that kind of eye.
Of course. No, I appreciate hearing your perspective on that. It was something that like you just said, in not saying, even in not using that word, just using Asian as the replacement there. I saw a creator on TikTok say, not in those same words, but something similar, where like just saying that, that's offensive.
Yeah, yeah.
Because you're comparing features like to like as being more or less desirable, and I'm taking, going to my med spa to fix it, is not something that anyone wants to hear. I think unfortunately it's like a horrible, a very unfortunate word choice on her part, and obviously a story to post. And I think she was at, as an influencer at the time, that's kind of her job. Like, you have one job, and it's to like not be offensive on social media, and not really, but like it is important. So I'm glad that that conversation came up, but I just because it's sparked this larger conversation about like just not the impact of words and your digital footprint. The fact that that wasn't the first time that she used that word and had been reprimanded about using it. There was another post from like when she was in high school or something.
Oh,
So unfortunately it wasn't just the one time. So she's gone on her apology tour. I think she is trying to take accountability, but she did say something to the effect of like, it's important for anyone who's accidentally holding space for this slur to like wake up and not hold space for this slur. So I hope that this season of Love Island encourages people to really broaden their horizons. And anyway, I'm bringing that up just because it is something that has been really recently in the media. And I think that even a page of your book would do a world of good for anyone who is, considering like, oh, maybe it's not that bad, or like, we've gone too soft. So
yeah. I mean, I think
essentially.
I'm super against that kind of woke, like cancel culture thing also.
Mm,
And I don't know if I agree with her getting removed from the show
mm,
off it. Like maybe she could have made a public apology on the show. Maybe that would have been even more educational because that would have been the widest audience.
yeah.
But her apology video afterwards, she seemed genuinely remorseful. And so um, I think I wrote this article for Teen Vogue about this controversy. And what I kind of
Mm,
said is that, like, I think it's more important to call people in. So yeah, we're all going to make mistakes. I'm sure I've said stuff that's like stupid, especially when I was like high on MySpace in my 20s. I'm sure I said some terrible things, but like, have you changed? Are you trying to change? And like, you know, are you repeating the same mistakes? And it sounds like Sierra, well, she'll definitely never use the word again, but it sounds like she's
yeah.
willing to learn. Yeah.
No, that's a really good point. That yeah. Also, for anyone out there, go find that article. Is it out yet? It
Yeah.
must be out.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay, I need to go and read that. I know. I think that's a really important thing to point out, because I think the precedent was set with the another contestant getting sent home within like the first like 48 hours for using the N word on podcast,
That
and
one's
so
even more like so unbelievable to me. Like what?
it
I didn't.
seems like a casting. I don't even know if it's a casting fail across the board. I mean, people are calling it that, but like it seems like you have to understand that like everyone is scrubbing everyone's social media now, and anything that's like remotely bad, people are going to find out. And so that I understand. Also, she wasn't really bringing that much to the show, that original contestant, but I think because that happened, that's why they're like, all right, we can't, there can't be a double standard here.
Yeah, if they're
um
gonna, yeah.
yeah, but I do really like your point about like bringing people in, because as much as, I myself try to subscribe to the wokeness of everything. I'm from the Bay Area. I feel like it's like baked in. And you kind of have to not relax on like calling out that stuff, because it's obviously very important. Um, but there is a little bit of like internalized, almost like neighborhood cop, I think, that the internet has now, of just like like gotcha
Yes.
ism.
And then I'm wondering, are they harder on women? Because
Mm,
I think it's been pointed out that some of the men have said some questionable things. And also, there's sometimes that people should be canceled, like Diddy should be canceled. Like the men are
yeah,
doing much more than saying a little. I'm not saying it's bad to, okay to say a slur, but they are
yeah.
like raping women and like doing
Or
violence to people.
or co-signing that behavior too. I think there were men on this season who like were reposting things that were super problematic, and like if you're co-signing that, and like things that are very explicitly racist, is that you're not saying it maybe publicly, but that's still something to maybe to look
But
into. But I
I don't
agree.
think they got any real serious heat for that. Not really. So they certainly didn't get kicked off the show.
No, I have my own opinions about some other people that were on that show. I think Huda was very problematic. And just I think there's a lot that happened with like against the black contestants even still. And it's like you're the same fans that were advocating for this removal of this contestant are now behaving still badly against the people that are there. And that's on
Mm.
stan culture. But I think it is something that it's just the new territory of the internet. I think times have changed. I think especially since I know you were very deeply entrenched in different parts of the MySpace era was a different time. And yeah, I'm just wondering about your experience about Asian representation online. I know you got into to modeling and also into music production.
Yeah, there was very little representations for Asia. I mean, it's still um, light now, but much better, exponentially better now. But yeah, growing up, there just wasn't really anyone. I think the one was Lucy Liu. Everybody knew Lucy
Mhm.
Liu, but then you couldn't like name too many other actresses. And then there weren't any singers, like zero, that would
Mm.
like reached mainstream like household name status.
Yeah.
Still very few of those. So yeah, like I think growing up when you don't see any kind of representations, it's hard to imagine yourself being able to do the same things.
Yeah.
I think it's like kind of just feels very lonely.
No, that makes sense. Do you feel like things have changed for the better, at least in any like media category? I know it
Oh,
hasn't been
so
like a
much better.
super long
Yeah.
time, but yeah.
No, it's been exponentially better. Like just the fact that K-pop is big in America is like mind-blowing to me still. I still can't get over that like there's Korean words being sung on the radio. Um, that's like mind-blowing to childhood me. And then also there's just social media has really democratized everything because then it's not
Mm.
dependent on some media person signing the artist and investing in them. It's just like, who do the public want to see? We're going to follow them. Like, I think the most followed um, Bella Porch or whatever is
Oh yeah.
Filipina from, yeah. So um, that wouldn't have happened, if she had to go sign with a record label without getting popular first, if you understand what I mean. Yeah.
Right. No, I there's so much going on now with also just like Nepo artists, and just like who is actually granted the chance.
Yeah.
I know you mentioned there was one chapter where you mentioned your music juxtaposed like Colby Calais. with like Bubbly, and how that she was just like a homegrown white girl, you know, singing a very poppy song, and how for you it was it, like to just exist in that way would not have been as marketable at the time.
Yeah, I think absolutely not. There's no like I don't think it was almost impossible for an Asian American to do anything in music at that time, much less doing it without being stereotyped, you know?
Yeah.
So we were I felt boxed in.
No, definitely. And you also worked as a pinup model and just a model in general. And just based on what I read, that was also at the time kind of, to bring back the word fetishized. It seemed like that was even like boxed in a way. It was not just here's a beautiful woman who happens to be Asian. You would have to like wear certain things also.
Yeah, I mean, I fetishized myself, I think, when I was young because it was like was more powerful because there was this like world of fetishy guys who were really
Yeah.
passionate. And the more you lean into your Asianness, the more, books or like magazine covers you'd get or like this and that. And when I was growing up, this was even before Lucy Liu existed. When I was growing up, there were no Asian female role models at all that were like beautiful and sexy. And when I was young, I just wanted to be beautiful and sexy because I was like so nerdy and ignored. So I
That's
just want,
relatable. I
yeah.
feel that. Definitely so good.
Yeah.
Mm.
So I wasn't like trying to be, because there were plenty of Asian women like Connie Chung, like you could be a newscaster or something, but I wanted to be
Mm.
like cute and sexy, like Britney Spears or something. But we didn't have
Yeah.
that. So when I was growing up, there was just this one model, and her name was Sung Hee Lee, and she was a Playboy model. And all the
Mm.
Asian guys knew who she was, and she was huge on the internet. And so then I was like, okay, I want to be like her because she's,
Yeah.
beautiful, and she's the only beautiful Asian woman I see.
Yeah, that's so interesting that like that when you're looking up to just like as a young woman, I think just it all goes back to the patriarchy. But just that like striving for acceptance, that is kind of part of it, is like who are my beauty, and who are those like strong female um models that I can look up to. Some of them might actually be models, and in this case it might be like a certain type of model. I know I looked up to like the Victoria's Secret models when
I
I
think
was younger, and I
everyone
bought
did,
like
yeah.
the sprays and stuff, and I got into like some commercial modeling and stuff, and the other kind of modeling scared me a little bit. But there are some creepy, I like that you touch on how disgusting that industry can be also, and how predatory. I don't want to give any spoilers, but I really appreciate your honesty in speaking to like your experience. And hindsight is absolutely 2020, and I think the moments where you like reflect back on how you may have acted in like certain moments in interacting with people and in those kind of more vulnerable situations, and just how you feel now about it. I am wondering, just on that note, if there was anything that was particularly like challenging to write about versus easier to write about, because it is a memoir.
Yeah, I mean, I have had a very public sexual assault happen when I was in college. And actually, I don't know if that was as hard to write about because, that happened to me. And I've obviously spoken to a million therapists about it and processed it a million times. And it
Hmm.
was maybe healing to write about it because, like, that video was online for decades and I've never commented on it. Um, and it's like the first time I get to say my piece or like my experience.
Yeah.
So it was actually, I think, very healing because I think that part of me, the victim part, was like totally tossed aside by myself and ignored.
Yeah. No, thank you for sharing that. One part that like really early on, I just want to be totally honest, like I started crying over was, I mean, I will cry. I've dropped the hat. But was
Okay.
about reflecting on just your growing up and just your family dynamic, and specifically like the Little Mermaid comparison with your dad. And I think a lot of people will be able to relate to that.
Yeah, I mean, The Little Mermaid, that was just, I watched that movie 100 times growing up, and it's such a
Hmm.
beautiful movie. But what I dig into in the book is that, like, it actually derives from a really horrible fairy tale, which is like really dark, where she
Yeah.
like commits her suicide at the end over this guy. So I think,
Yeah.
we've already reflected when the new Little Mermaid came back how the actual Little Mermaid story is kind of anti-feminist, because it's like,
Hmm.
I'm going to give up my voice and change my body to win this
For a
prince.
man. Yep.
Yeah. And then the happy ending is just that she wins him, you know.
Yeah.
And I guess we're realizing now we should teach girls to strive for much more than that. But I
Yeah.
just feel like all these Disney movies when we were a kid conditioned us all to like be chasing that. Like that's what we were
Yeah, that
taught.
like male approval.
Yeah.
And I really did appreciate throughout kind of again, I don't know whether it was like in the moment back then or just like in retrospect, just like realizing that that is like what you in your in your gut kind of like what you were seeking like approval, but I imagine it's like very layered, not only wanting to seek approval from like the male object of like your interest, but also just living up to specific just expectations of being an Asian American woman, and it
And yeah,
just
also your family expectations. And yeah. And I think daddy issues is like a cliche because it is a thing, you know. I
yeah.
think some women who grow up with very loving and validating fathers may come away with less issues, you know. I see how my brother and his niece are parenting their niece, and they're so loving. And I'm like, and I
Yeah.
don't want to say anything about my parents because my parents were immigrants. They gave up everything for us and they like have given us amazing lives, but they weren't taught to like nurture us. They were trying to survive. So like I
Right.
totally understand their point of view, but then I was still just someone who was so in need of validation and words of affirmation, and not getting that caused me to seek it in unhealthy places.
Of course. No, that makes a lot of sense. I think that is, I know it's, I don't want to cast a generalization over like immigrant families. I have, my mom's an immigrant, my dad is not. And I know she specifically had a little bit more of just like, we're in America now, we have to do X, Y, and Z. There is a little bit more of that survival aspect like baked in. But I do, recognizing that it might also be specific to Taiwanese culture as well, maybe some like nuances.
Yeah, no, I think immigrants, like
Mhm.
you come here and you made an effort to come here. So I think it's that immigrant experience, I think it's probably similar across all immigrants, like that
Yeah.
go getter attitude of like, let's make this work.
Of course. And there was a chapter specifically when you spoke about ABGs, which is it's Asian baby girls, correct? Was there
Yeah.
another acronym also?
I think it's Asian baby gangsters, but Asian baby
Okay.
girls is the common one.
Yeah, it seems like slightly more PC. I remember like seeing that like floating around. And what I thought really, and that one also seems like a little bit more I think still in the vernacular. In a way, I definitely like still see that term used on TikTok. But what's really interesting about that to me specifically is that it really seems like the perfect encapsulation of like the Madonna whore complex, for lack of a better term, where it's like the expecting that like virginal sexual submission, but then also appearing sexually available in like a slightly like westernized
Yeah.
way, like more like really broadly like sexually available. And yeah, I'm just wondering your thoughts on that specifically, because it to me it seems like that is something that all women to some
Yeah.
extent are kind of have to toe the line with, of just like, and I think now with like all the trad stuff also, it's like you have to be, don't wear makeup, appear to be 12 years old, but also like I expect you to, be pornographic in some way or another, or really just to be available. But so, yes, that does apply to all women, but it really does seem amplified when it comes to Asian fetishization specifically.
Yeah, there's some kind of infantilization
Mm.
involved inherently. And I think like partially Asian women look young, and then the guy's expecting them to also be submissive. So that's like double on double um, submissive. And
Mm-hmm.
then you see it in like Nicolas Cage. I don't know if you noticed his wives like keep getting like his latest wives. I think she's
Yeah.
like 30 or something, but she looks like she's like 17 or something. And
And
then
he's
there's
what,
that.
like 100 years
I
old? He's
know.
older now, right?
It's
People
so
love his
sad.
movies, but like it's
No,
important to point out.
I love his movies. I
Hmm.
loved Con Air, like these movies that are kind of cheesy, and Face Off. Like I love those movies. They're great movies. But him
Hmm.
as a person, like the power dynamic, I just feel like
Hmm.
I think men who date women who are that young have like internalized misogyny, because it's like, oh, you don't want someone who's your equal. You want someone you can
Yeah.
control. There's a huge power dynamic. You want, like a child.
No, that's so important. I'm glad that you mentioned the power dynamic part because I had like written a note when I was reading about like I said, what do these men love really? It seems like power to me.
Always, yeah.
And it's like, but that is what but it's really historically that Asian women have specifically been kind of like at the brunt of that. And I know a lot of it had to do with like post-war stuff and some really ugly stuff that happened there. And I appreciate that you throw in those historical details also because like, growing up in California, I learned about, specifically the Japanese internment camps and you got to like visit museums about that. I know
Oh,
not
well.
everyone across the US, I think, um, you know, some things might be seem more specific to California's history. And I feel like the whole Sierra getting kicked off, that show brought to light for me that like I don't think across this great nation, No Child Left Behind, that everyone learned about just like specific, you know, travesties that happened to Asian groups specifically in the United States. And I learned even more from this book.
I would
Um,
bet
yeah.
most people don't even know about the Japanese internment. I bet a lot of people don't know about it. Yeah.
Yes, that's so disturbing. And I feel like the more wise we get, the more we realize that either we know less or that other people also realizing that other people don't know. So that's good to point out.
Well, the Japanese internment was not that long ago, right? It was like um I don't know the exact year, but say 50 years, right? Um
Yeah.
and we're having immigration issues now. It's not like things like this could not happen again.
Yeah, I'm glad that you brought that up, just like how recent that was, because I think I've maybe seen one reference to that recently, probably on Twitter, which is a cesspool for many reasons. But people share important articles sometimes, and somebody was like, "You guys, like, did you know that we did this pretty recently?" And I think I'm like, "Wow, I had no idea. I didn't learn about this." Um, but I also think at the time I had a little more sensitivity to it because my dad introduced me to anime at a very young age.
Oh,
And
really?
so it's like anything like Japanese culture, I was like tuned into. And I feel very fortunate growing up in an area where I always had East Asian and South Asian classmates and um, always still an education for me. But in terms of like witnessing files or just
Yeah.
fetishization. I had a number of friends who had a crush on this older Korean student who beautiful, seemed super cool, seemed way too cool for them. She did not know they existed. And I think they liked her based on some of the things that you touch on in your book, like just her her appearance, her stature, her just being quiet. And she's also a wonderful person, but they knew her name.
Mm.
And so I think that is, I don't know why it feels like endemic to white men to like specifically have these fetish. And maybe there I feel like there is I don't know what it is, and especially in the Bay Area, but I think there is a fine line between like appreciation. I don't want to like knock that also, and obviously there's appropriation on one side with Gwen Stefani and Harajuku girls,
Yeah.
and then the fetishization, and some of it's all like mixed together, but
Yeah, it's really hard because it's a fine line because I don't want to like demonize like okay, here's an example. I have this guy friend and he's married to an Asian woman. First Asian
mhm.
woman he ever dated. He just like happened to fall in love with an Asian woman and get married. But everybody else he dated before was not Asian. And he says he gets like looks or like people saying
Mm.
things to him, and that's why he knows about the Asian fetish, because people are like kind of giving him weird comments, and it's really
Yeah.
unfair to people who just genuinely fall in love with an Asian woman and then have to be under this umbrella of like judgment that because of these other weird guys.
Right. No, that's very fair. Like it's also, on the other side of the coin is like not fair to like assume that anyone with an Asian partner like is specifically fetishizing them in that way. I think when you see the case like Nicolas Cage where, it seems like
Yeah.
he might be trading one person for another, or there's the problematic, I know age gaps are like all the rage to talk about, but I think there is something to be said for that there too with the power dynamic. But that is true. It's about the human being and the person. And I think there's just this, as you explore in the book, there's just this there's a legacy of there being some issues with that, like with the passport bros stuff that's happening now too,
Yeah,
if you're
that's
familiar.
so creepy. I mean, literally, there are tours where you can sign sex tours where you can sign up
No
and
way.
like go to Thailand and have sex, basically.
Oh God.
I don't know. I don't know if they must still exist now, but I know they were like in the LA Weekly or something, and you'd see it in the back pages. Um,
Yeah.
but sex tourism Thailand's a multi-million dollar business, and it's just gross that people can go there and just like kind of use women like that, like a
It's
tissue.
Well, it's absolutely disgusting. But it also there's the power dynamic thing there too, where it's not like, oh, you're looking for a companion or
No.
anything like that, or it really is like an exercising power in a way that you can hide it, kind of,
Hmm.
over there. I feel like White Lotus this year brought that to light like a tiny bit, which was interesting.
Yeah, I
Um,
hadn't even heard that term before. So that White Lotus brought up the term loser back home,
oh
which is
yeah.
basically, yeah, which I hadn't heard of before, but apparently in Thailand, that's what they call a certain type of man.
Okay.
Um, yeah, like that's a known stereotype in some Asian countries about some expats. But
Yeah.
yeah, it's basically because you're going into these impoverished countries where the women are just barely trying to survive, and the American dollar does really hold much more of a weight. So
Mhm.
the men are punching much above their weight as they would back home, basically.
Yeah. It seems like something, I mean, just in the same way that like the internment camps were like not that long ago, the fact that this is just still happening. I mean, I'm not surprised. And I don't want to say that like you should just talk to a chatbot because I'm also very anti AI. But like, I mean, I'm sure it has some fine applications, but like, I think that's also going to be very problematic. In the end, you know, I am still, part of me is still, maybe I just am too hopeful for the human race and for men specifically. They need to get it together. This is not the answer to the male loneliness epidemic. Is
No, I
is the
love men,
passport?
and I feel like there's
Yeah.
so many good men out there. We're just like, I just want to stress that this is not like demonizing all men. We are
Oh no. Yeah.
speaking about a specific minority who is very loud and vocal.
Yeah.
And then I also want to point out that people going to Thailand for sex tourism are not only white guys. There's South Korean guys going and taking advantage because they're a more wealthier country. There's Asian American guys who go over and do the same thing. So it's more
Mm.
like a monetary power dynamic in that
Okay.
situation.
Oh, that's interesting. That's good to know. Also,
Yeah.
not surprising. But good to know. Yeah, I know. I think that's important to point out. I have issues with the like men are trash stuff. I think there's a lot of like really bad dating advice out there online now, and
Yeah.
I think it is
Yeah.
actually creating a bigger division. And I think it's okay to jokingly say that, but I have younger brothers that I am so protective over, and they've had issues like I see them like dumped by someone. I'm like, no. I care about them all, and I have a lot of close guy friends too, and I hope the best for most of them. I do. And I think it's not really productive, to like say that. I think the patriarchy overall, I think, is
Yes,
maybe.
yeah. It's a system because a patriarchy also hurts good men too. Good men
Mm,
who want to be emotional and vulnerable, like they're being taught, no, that's like a sissy, like be a man. And that's
yeah.
harmful to both men and women because we do want our men to be sensitive and vulnerable with their feelings.
No, of course. Yeah, I think it really is kind of like we all need to like come together against, again, it really does come down to like money and power being the larger issues. Billionaires are the ones we should really be going after.
Yeah.
But no, I appreciate that like clarification. That I think throughout, it's definitely clear that the issues are more like systemic and historic more than like villainizing men specifically. And yeah, I appreciate like your just vulnerability and honesty throughout. This is a book that everyone needs to read, in my opinion. But I think one kind of through line that was also in Jeff Weiss's Waiting for Britney Spears, which I have right here next to me still. Do you know Jeff?
I don't know him personally, but I have his book and I'm like 25% through it and it's great. Yeah.
Yeah, it's really entertaining. But that time period, I think if anyone is just like interested in like digging into like really honest accounts of like living through the early 2000s, like the MySpace era, and I think Tila Tequila was referenced in both books. I might be wrong.
Oh, okay.
But I'm
In mine,
trying to
yeah, for
remember
sure.
because yeah, even just by name and just like kind of like the raunch culture and like things that really I think like colored a lot of media at the time. If you're listening to this, even if you have like a passing interest in that time period, please read Fetishized. Like I just really believe that like anyone who has an interest in that time period or who lived through that time period, it's really kind of a trip
It was a
back through
very
that time.
interesting time. Yeah. When you look
Yeah.
back at it, it's like, oh, we were very toxic, the culture.
I didn't have a MySpace, but I like joined Facebook later, and then I remember I've seen Tila Tequila on like she had a show, right?
Yeah, yeah, the
Uh,
dating show. I forgot what it's called, but she had a dating show on MTV.
yeah, I definitely was not supposed to be watching that. And I didn't. But yeah, it was such a different time, but I am still tickled by the fact that the fashion has like come back
Oh no,
in like
I don't
different
like the
ways.
low-rise jeans. I don't want
Yeah,
them to
so
have as
I'm
many. Yeah.
wondering, just to like end on a lighthearted note, because I love talking about microtrends. Are there any trends from that time, singular or plural, that you would not want to see come back, or you're not loving coming back?
Basically all of them, like the belly piercings where like
Mm.
everybody had those. That was when everyone had the stamp, the what people call the tramp stamp or whatever
Oh yeah,
tattoo right in the battle. The skinny eyebrows, don't want those because like my eyebrows never grew back after that.
your eyebrows are fantastic.
Well, that's because
They,
they're microbladed. But
oh.
I have no eyebrows because I spent that whole decade plucking them.
Mm.
Um, And remember the trucker hats, Von Dutch? Let's not bring that
Oh
back
yeah.
either. Yeah. I think let's not
There's
bring
a
back
really
anything.
interesting documentary on Von Dutch and Ed Hardy
Yes,
also.
yeah.
I remember that thinking that was so, it just seemed trashy, but it was
Yeah.
cool,
Because
you
trashy
know?
was cool. Yeah,
It
that was
was
like the
really
whole
the
thing. Yeah.
Mick Bling era or whatever. Is there anything that you welcome back at all?
I really liked my sidekick. I don't know if I'd want it now because I like my phone, but like it was
Yeah.
fun to just flip it up like that.
Oh yeah, was that the one that like was
Yeah.
that different than a BlackBerry
Yeah, it
or
was like the Paris Hilton phone where you would flip up
oh.
the screen. Yeah.
Okay.
And it was
Yeah,
really
I like
trendy.
some people are bringing back like the as dumb phones, which is really I think is ridiculous because I think smartphones are actually the dumb phones in a way because it's like we're like iPad kids with these, right?
Yeah,
I
yeah.
think that to use those, I remember I don't know if my dad had a BlackBerry or not. I definitely saw like people with them though. That looked so hard to you. I don't know. Like that's harder to that's not a dumb piece of technology.
Yeah, it's a tiny
But
little typing device. Yeah.
yeah, those can come back. But yeah, it seems like there's trends are very cyclical, and I don't know what we're gonna cycle to next. But I do really appreciate that there are people who are really giving their. It's kind of just like an added bonus, I think, in a way that there are people who are writing about this time period, while also like touching on really important topics that obviously still resonate today. So I guess my last question to you might be, besides I'll ask you in a second here where people can find you, but if there are any just trends in terms of Asian representation that you are seeing and that you like hope continue.
I am just so I'm a huge Blackpink fan. So
Mhm.
I'm just so excited that they're on tour right now, but it's just crazy that they're each pursuing their own solo careers and
Yes.
like doing, differentiating themselves and being very individual. So they're not stereotyped because they're all different from each other and they're
Right.
all having their own little fandoms. So I would love to see more of that representation.
Yeah, I know that's really important to point out. I think it's something that people might not necessarily take for granted, but like just not notice. I think people were used to seeing like K-pop. I mean, as someone who's just like is a passive fan who does not know too much about, I mean, I know BTS, I know Blackpink. I think
Yeah.
that's probably, and I know it's like saying that like all anime is the same. It's actually a huge, thing.
Well, it's crazy
But
that you even know them. Like, you wouldn't think anyone non-Asian would listen to that or know about it back in the day.
yeah, and they're headlining Coachella now.
Yeah, yeah,
So
that's crazy.
it's definitely come a long way, and I'm hoping that that it continues to like bleed over into other media. I think music is obviously one of the more like driving forces, and I think trend setting in a way. So I'm excited to see where that goes to. But we have come a long way
Hmm.
in that sense. But yeah, I have so many other questions. I could talk to you forever. But I just wanted to say thank you again for sharing this book. I was really, really moved. I feel like I learned a lot. And I mean, I already had an interest in like the topics at hand. And I just think um, it's gonna be a hit. I'm very, very excited. So
Yeah.
please go ahead and pick up a copy of Fetishized. Yeah, any other things you'd like to add where people can find you across different platforms?
Yeah, I'm just my name, so Kaila Yu. It's just you can find that on Instagram or TikTok, and the book's available at all stores in both audiobook and ebook and hard copy. So, yeah, you can find it everywhere.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Kyla. Loved chatting with you again. And I know this is definitely a book that I'm going to come back to also and recommend to everyone. So thank you so much for your time. And yeah, and everyone else, thank you for listening and or watching.
Microtrending.